Welcome to the Midday Treat with NAZ Elite, hosted by me, Coach Ben Rosario, featuring the Hoka NAZ Elite athletes, and from time to time, a special guest from the world of running. We talk training and racing, but we also just talk, and we go way deeper than just running. The Midday Treat is your chance to get to know us as people, so follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And now, check out this episode of the Midday Treat with NAZ Elite. Hey guys, welcome to this edition of Midday Treat with NAZ Elite. Today's guest is Stephanie Bruce. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see Stephanie. For those of you listening on the various podcast channels, you are going to hear Stephanie in just a minute. Perhaps, as you know, if you listened to our last episode, what we're trying to do for the rest of 21 here is get the athletes, the NAZ Elite athletes, onto the show so that we can take deep dives into how they're doing, what they're getting ready for, how training's going, but also just talk about a variety of things outside of running so that you can get to know them a little better. That is the plan for the podcast for the near future. So today we're bringing Steph on because Steph's got a lot going on. She's getting ready for a marathon this fall. She's got a race coming up this very weekend. She's kind of into training now, so we've got a lot to talk about on that end. We asked Steph's followers on social media to throw us some questions, and you guys came through big time. So most of the show actually is going to be Stephanie answering your questions straight from social media. And then we will get to a topic that Steph and I have discussed recently on a run here and there that we thought maybe would be fun for you guys to listen to as well. So without further ado, Stephanie, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
For those, I'm going to get this out of the way. For those maybe seeing me on the video screen asking what this is, I think you can see it from here. But I had a lot of people on social ask me during my massage last week, I had what's called cupping done. And a lot of times if you have like an area on your body that has a lot of restriction, and we kind of found like from running hard at altitude, sometimes your shoulders can cave in and your breathing, your diaphragm, all this gets really tight. So we found a really good spot and it's been opened up. So that's why I have this funny looking mark on my shoulder.
And who is your massage therapist?
I have two. I work with Shay Tinder and Olivia Smith.
There we go.
Yep.
Shout out to Shay and Olivia.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that out of the way, here we go. First, let's just do what we have to do. Give us an update on how training's going, and let the audience know, I think most people know, but what marathon are you doing, why you chose that, and then how training's going. Why don't we do it that way?
Okay, great. So I'm running the TCS New York City Marathon. Not really a hard decision. It's one of my favorite marathons and one that I have a dream bucket of goal to win one day. I have run it 2 times before, and then I'm originally from New York, so it kind of feels like a hometown marathon to me. And yeah, it just fit in like really well with how we kind of plotted out this year and perhaps the next couple of years, just having this marathon, and the fact that I get to train alongside Kellen was a great opportunity because we always bring out the best in each other. And then where I'm at, I'm just tired, and as you know, because you're our coach, just in the thick of training right now. We're kind of in this like unique phase where you could say it's like full-on marathon training, but it's not quite yet, because since we started training about 12 weeks out from New York City, you can't just go hard marathon training, in my opinion, for 12 weeks. So we kind of break it up into like 2 training cycles. And this first one, we're really working on a little more like speed, power, like getting used to running hard and strong uphills. That way, when we get to like marathon specific pace, we have that power in our legs, and then that's going to carry us through to the actual marathon pace and marathon training.
Yeah, we have done a good bit of hill running here early on in the segment, which could prove useful this weekend. So what are we doing this weekend?
So this weekend I'm racing the Cow Harbor 10K in Northport, Long Island. Again, any excuse to get back to New York and where my roots are. And I have run this race 3 times before. I have yet to win. I've been second, fourth. And so obviously the goal is to win. And I'm really just trying to run as fast as I can and try to take a crack at the course record.
So, as they all probably know, I was 7th.
Oh.
When I ran it back in the day.
There you go. Let's see how close to your time I can run.
Yeah, probably faster. No, the Cow Harbor's fun. It's a fun race, and so that will be good, a good test. And as Stephanie said, the segment is sort of broken up into 2 halves. And this falls, Cow Harbor will fall 7 weeks out from New York. So then we'll take a few easy days, sort of a recharge week, and then we'll be into that marathon-specific phase of the training, which will begin in earnest that following weekend.
Yeah.
So there you go. Mm-hmm. So that's an update on Steph's training. And you're healthy, right? Everything's good?
Everything's been great. I mean, knock on wood, considering a little over, was it a year ago? No, less than that. I was dealing with plantar fasciitis, and a lot of people were kind of following that journey. And I wrote a little blog on my website at stephbruce.com, where if you're having plantar issues, you can check that out. I kind of shared my rehab. But also what I tell everyone is I'm really fortunate. I have therapists and people that are watching me run, so they can see like, oh, you're overstriding, or these are little subtleties leading to it. So I feel for a lot of people who have plantar issues, because it can be an ongoing problem. But at the current moment, I don't have any pain in my heel, so I'm really fortunate. And yeah, I think I just have the normal like aches and pains that a lot of mileage and training brings.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, gang. Well, if you gave Steph a question on Twitter, I think that we're going to get to all of them. Some quicker than others. We'll go rapid fire on a few of them. But I have a list here in front of me of some of the questions that we can dig into. And I've tried to group them by category, I suppose. And I think chronologically, this first set is interesting because we're talking about how training's going now. But of course, training is affected not only by things like plantar fasciitis, but of course, as you guys know in your own running, by all sorts of things. Sometimes things out of your control, sometimes life things, life stressors that have nothing at all to do with running, but they affect your running. And so, as you know, only because Steph is willing to share these things on social media, she was dealing with quite a bit of grief, and still is, over the loss of her mother. And quite a few of you asked questions about that, and I think though it's a difficult subject, Steph is kind enough to answer those questions. And so the one off the top that I was going to start with was just, and I didn't write who wrote these questions, but just how do you cope with grief?
Yeah, I really appreciated people asking this. As some of you may or may not know, my mom passed away about 3 months ago, and it was like a really long battle with breast cancer for her. And I would say like a year ago, I probably, looking back, was dealing with what I call anticipatory grief, meaning I knew that it was coming. I knew she was going to pass away at some point. And so you're almost like waiting to get there. And then truthfully, I thought, not that I'd feel better, but I thought it would be easier because I was having this anticipation. But it's been a lot harder than I thought and imagined. Having lost my dad, 20 years ago, I thought, okay, I've dealt with losing a parent before. I can do this again. But this one has been hitting me really hard, and I don't have an answer. And it's like one of the first time I don't have, like, this is how you do this. That's how I like to do things in life. Oh, you want to get here? Like, go through these steps. And of course, people like share, these are the steps of grief. But as I've been finding on social, like other people sharing their stories of grief, it's like this awful club that people don't want to be in, but they're just in. And so you have this like these collective stories of grief. And sometimes hearing others makes me feel better. Like I think, oh, mine grief's not that hard. Someone lost a child or whatever. And so then you do this comparison, but every grief story is different. So I would say the best way I think I'm dealing it is I'm just letting it come. Like a few weeks ago, I found myself in like a really dark hole for a few days. And I even asked Coach Ben if I could kind of take a week away from practice because I didn't feel like being around people. I didn't know how to like be myself. I didn't know how to ask people how they were doing because I didn't have any capacity to give. And And, my husband, Ben, has seen a lot of sides of it. A few weeks ago, or maybe like a month ago, he was like, I don't know if you're going to be able to race New York City Marathon because, where I was at was pretty low. We look back at the trials and we thought, would I have done anything different? But I had no idea. I wanted to believe I could train. I was doing all the things. But like you said, grief just hits you differently, and it is stressful. Whether you acknowledge it or not, it's just an extra stress on the body. And I didn't know that was going on back in June. So hindsight, it's easy to say, maybe I shouldn't have been on the start line of the Olympic track trials. But then you hear stories of people like overcoming, and they have these amazing races, but that was not on the cards for me at all. But that's kind of my career. I mean, you can always look back and choose things differently, or I would have raced it this way, or would have, trained a little less. But I don't know. Sometimes you can't control all the things that go around your training or around your race. So I say control the controllables. And for me, that just means feeling the days that are pretty low, and then being okay if I'm like, I'm actually doing really good for a week. And I imagine it'll go on like that for a while, maybe the rest of my life. But I have enough good around to like be able to focus on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a good, that is a good segue into the next question, because someone wrote, I've had friends who found that running helped them process grief. But I imagine for an elite athlete, the grief is mostly just another, parentheses, unwanted stressor in training, which you kind of just touched on. Are you building in more rest, mindfulness, recovery to help cope? Are those things part of the process for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think they nailed it. Like, running is not really my outlet for grief, because in a different way, like, running is my job. So it's something like I get up every day and my job is 24/7. So for a while, my grief was taken away from my running, because I wasn't like, oh, let me just go out and clear my head. I was like losing my breath on runs and feeling like I couldn't breathe, and that wasn't good. Like, I remember this one workout actually right before my mom passed. I was in Phoenix, and I remember being like, I just want to get up and meet the women, my teammates, and do a workout in Camp Verde. So I drove up from Phoenix, did a workout with them, and I was so glad to be around them, because I could almost like forget everything that was happening. And then got the workout done, and then like I'm halfway on the cool down, and I just like started kind of hyperventilating, and I couldn't really breathe, and I had to stop. And Alfie and Kellen and Lauren, like, we all stopped and had this group hug, and they all cried with me. And so I was like, I don't know if I'm dealing with it. I don't know if running is good for this, but it's kind of like my motto, like, if you just keep moving forward, like, eventually you will get through things. So in one aspect, I think I've brought in just more acknowledgement how I'm feeling, and maybe not the grief, but more this training cycle and like where I'm at in my career. I'm just trying to slow things down in ways where I was a lot like lazier, so to speak, or like I did less when I was younger. And so I'm trying to bring that back in and say, just give yourself the best chance to recover, train really hard, and don't have too much on your plate. And that probably is helping with the grief a little bit, but it's just helping with my overall stress for sure.
Okay, last grief question,
Yes.
Steph, I promise. This is a good question.
Yeah.
What would your grieving self have told your pre-grieving self about how to get out the door, start prehab, start to walk out the door, start the strength work, etc.?
For sure. Gosh, I don't know. Sometimes I think like I've always been grieving, because I did have my father pass away, when I was 18, and then having my mom sick for so many years. Like I mentioned, I think I was going through anticipatory grief. So in a way, I think grief has kind of been in my life for a very long time. But I've just had so many, it sounds so cliche, but I've just had so many good things happen in my life. It's very hard for me to find negatives in things. So even though like I have what feels like sad things happen, I'm just always able to look at like the brighter side of it. So I think the grief part of it now is, I guess I don't apologize for like crying, or I don't like tell someone, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting upset, or I just like live and I express my feelings and I'm going to share them, and I don't feel bad about them anymore, or I don't feel like I need to act a certain way in a certain setting. I'm just like, yeah, I'm grieving. Like, that's what's going on. And so that's something that I probably would tell myself now, like, just act how you need. If getting out the door feels like impossible, maybe that means you're on the couch that day. But I guarantee if you let yourself feel those things, maybe 3 days later, you're like, I'm ready to get back into it. Because that's how, like, these last couple months have been for me.
Okay, I lied. One more little thing.
Okay.
Because I know that right after that really dark period that you mentioned a second ago, that you had to go right into hosting Bruce Camp.
Correct.
Which is not an easy thing to do. It's an incredibly emotional week, regardless of the context, because you're basically in charge of 30 or so people that have come all the way to Flagstaff from all parts of the country in North America to have this super fun week. Yeah. And so you're expected to, you, Steph, and Ben are expected to bring all this energy to them. Yeah. And so that can be somewhat draining. But I also saw you at camp and felt like camp helped. Yeah. Talk about camp.
I mean, it did, because, well, one, you had people there who knew everything going on. And then I had people coming up and, like, telling me their grief stories. Yeah. So they're like, let me tell you about this. And then recently, like, we were just going through our mail and we were getting thank you cards, which I was like, guys, you paid to come to our camp. You don't need to write thank you cards. But it just, like, reiterated what an impact something like a running camp can have on a person. Like, someone even said life-changing. And it's hard to, like, believe that or see that from our perspective. But if someone's having that experience, it is so worth the tiny little bit of stress that I might have had. But also, like, I could just be myself. Like, there were times where, I was crying on a trail run and a lady was like, let's talk about it. So, I don't know. I think it's like, that's where, like, social media comes in. The people that are following us and our team and myself and Ben and then coming to the camps, like, we're obviously putting out the right message because it's the right people coming and showing up. So it feels less like a task and more like I'm hanging out with my people.
Absolutely. And how can people find out about Bruce Camp? Bruce Camp 22?
Yep. So they can go to stephbruce.com, and we have a link to Bruce Camp and then also the Women's Grit and Growth Retreats.
And there's another one coming up, Grit and Growth.
Correct. Registration and announcement coming soon.
See, this is Steph. 2 seconds ago, she says, I'm taking everything off my plate. I'm going to take it very easy. And now she's announcing yet another retreat.
But I planned it for after New York.
Oh, okay. After New York.
That's right.
All right. So here's a couple quick ones. How do you deal and get through periods when you are unmotivated to run?
Okay, people don't believe this, but I'm never not motivated. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I just have a very intrinsic feeling that I've had since I was 18, and I think it has to do with after my father passed away, and I had this, like, aha moment of, do I go this way or do I go this way? And running was over here, and I say this story all the time, but running was just like a gift, and it wasn't something I have to do, it was something I get to do. And the more that I kind of took that path and just, like, stayed persistent, it was like, there were tough periods because I was getting injured or I wasn't healthy, but then when I found answers to that and the more time and effort I put in, the more I got back from running. And then when I got to a point where I was good enough to get paid to do it, like, now I get paid to run, to eat, to sleep, to recover, to race as hard as I can, to challenge myself mentally and physically. It's really not that hard to be motivated.
Well, I think you answered it for them in your answer, because if you're finding yourself in a period that is a down period or you're not motivated to run, just remind yourself that you get to do this thing that you love. And perhaps that's enough.
Totally.
Perhaps that is enough. How can injuries take away your self-confidence?
I like that question. They take away your self-confidence because as runners, we tend to look back at the last good thing we did, whether that's a workout or a race. So the farther away you get from a successful race or a successful workout, the more you're in a hole of thinking, I'm not that good. Like, you forget all the really great things you accomplish, and you're like, I'm not that person anymore, because you haven't seen, like, glimpses of it recently. And I mean, this happens to me 12 years into my professional running career. But when I haven't run a marathon in so long, I'm like, oh, am I actually good at the marathon? Am I going to be able to be top 3 at New York, which is what I want to do? And then I say, yes, Stephanie, because you look at all the good things you have done, and that running is a cumulative effect. Like, I'm not just good because of these last 7 weeks. I'm going to be really good because of these last 18 months and the last 2 years. So sometimes you need to just like search farther back before your injury and realize what kind of runner like were you before. And that hasn't gone away. Just injuries are part of the game, and every runner has setbacks they're dealing with. Some people health issues, some bones, some energy stuff, whatever it is. Yeah, and just realize we're all kind of fighting that battle. Even the best people in the sport are worrying, oh, am I going to be able to make it to the Olympics? Am I going to medal? So you're not alone in that thinking.
All right, now there's a lot of pressure on this one because this person says they will share your answers with the high school team they coach. What advice would you give your younger self regarding your training and nutrition?
Okay.
So I assume this is your high school self
Yeah.
because they're talking to a high school team.
I like have the answer that nobody likes because I loved how I did it in high school. I say this because in high school, my coach Dave Van Sickle at Xavier, he just fostered like a really fun atmosphere. I mean, in high school, we were running 30 to 40 miles a week. We were finding any excuse to stop at a stoplight so we could like break up our run. We're like, oh, looks like it's turning yellow. We should stop. And we just had a really good time. And then we brought our A game on race day, but maybe we didn't have a ton of training behind us. But it kind of showed me I think it showed me how to get the most out of myself, even if I wasn't as prepared as maybe my competitors. And it showed me how to like dig deep mentally. And then, nutrition wise, I mean, I wasn't the best at eating in high school. Like I ate fast food 5 days a week, but I think I was just kind of a casual teenager who didn't care too much about how I was performing, but just wanted to have a good social life and was part of this cross country team and track team, maybe because my coach wanted me to, and my mom and dad thought that I had more potential. But I was just having a really good time and not taking myself seriously. So I wouldn't change that for anything because I think that's now what has allowed me to run into my late 30s. Because I had a really great balance of working hard, having fun, like healthy body image, not worried about what my competitors look like or what they're doing. I was just focused on what I was doing, and I still love the sport so much, and that's how I can, I think, keep cranking out 100-mile weeks, 20 plus years past high school.
Love it. Love that answer. Love it. And it's a good segue. How do you, people can tell you have a lot of energy. You're passionate. How do you keep your energy level so high?
I mean, energy level is such like a, gosh, that's a hard question. Because if you came into my household and you asked about energy level, husband, Ben Bruce, would definitely win the energy award, and my 2 kids, Riley and Hudson. So I'm actually pretty mellow in my house, and my overall personality, I think, it's like fast paced, but it's not like crazy, and I'm not trying to go everywhere and do everything. I'm really methodical about like even being busy. Like I schedule things throughout the day, but I always have a nap scheduled. I never get less than 8 hours of sleep, so I have a hard bedtime because I know when my children wake up. So I think I schedule periods of like, I guess high energy, but also I'm pretty mellow throughout the day. And then the way my training is and how I am for races, like I don't get up for workouts. Like I come to the workout ready to work hard or ready to crush it, but I am not like overly excited or overly bummed if I hit the workout or don't hit the workout, because I've done this for so many years. I know that one workout does not make a runner. So I feel like my energy is pretty like even kill. And then I bring that energy to race day, because for me, that's more important than a workout. So that, and I really love coffee. Coffee is the first thing I have to do in the morning before I talk to anyone else. I used to be a twice a day coffee kind of person, like afternoon, but that's actually my tip to recovery. I have cut out afternoon coffee for the last 2 weeks, and I feel like I'm really liking what that's doing to me.
You know what I've been doing in the afternoon a little bit, Stephanie?
Yes.
Decaf coffee. Because I love the feeling of drinking
it's the social part of it too.
Yes.
Like people are like, do you want to meet up? And I'm like, I do want to meet up with you, but I don't want to drink coffee. And if I go in a coffee shop, so I'm losing friends over the last couple weeks.
Try decaf.
But I like that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, here's the next one. This is a cool one because, so I am very proud that we have been able to create this fan base over many years now. And the fan base really is global. And of course, Hoka appreciates that because they're a global brand. But this next question was written in Spanish, so I'm going to try to read it just for the heck of it. And then I'll translate it. ¿Cómo es la vida de una atleta top para mantenerse entre las mejores? Didn't do it well.
No, can we go? I feel like I know who this is. Can I grab my phone and maybe
look
up? Because I have this one follower who I love and always responds.
And he always tweets in Spanish?
Yes,
okay.
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. ¿Cómo es la vida de una atleta para mantenerse entre las mejores? I feel like I'm back in Spanish class, but I did better that time.
Okay.
So the translation, folks, for that is, as best I could tell from Google, how is the life of a top athlete to stay among the best? So, how do you stay at the top of your game in your sport?
You say?
Oh, running with
Libertad.
At Argentina Cred. That's who wrote this.
I don't know, but this is my assumption.
Oh, well, that's very possible because he tweets at you in Spanish. Well, this is great.
I'm thinking this might be you.
And we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for being a fan.
Maybe Argentina.
Maybe it's from Argentina?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would think it is.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay,
They speak Spanish in Argentina.
Okay, they do. How
do you stay at the top?
How do you stay at the top?
I mean, you've gone into this in some of your other answers. I mean, I think you guys can tell from listening to Steph that she takes her craft very seriously. So she thinks about not only running, but she thinks about sleep and she thinks about scheduling her day and taking her naps and her nutrition and everything that goes into it. She said, remember earlier, it's a 24/7 job. And you also heard her talk about how she actually specifically tries not to get too high and too low emotionally surrounding any one workout because she has to stay sort of even keel throughout a training segment. So I think you've already answered some of this in the course of the podcast thus far. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that stands out to you as more important than the other things?
I mean, I think over the last few years, one thing, and I don't know if this is like a mindset, I think there's a quote about this, but it's like, it says something like, this is kind of harsh, but it's like losers focus on winners focus on themselves.
Yeah.
It sounds like harsh, but I kind of like the story behind that because it's so easy in our sport to look at other people's training. What are they doing? How are they getting
here? Oh my
here?
gosh, we're going to get to this.
Okay.
I've got this in a question later.
Yep. But my whole point is like, I signed on to run for Hoka NAZ Elite to be coached by Ben Rosario. It does me no good to look at what other people are doing on Strava or Final Surge or anything and be like, how could my training be like that? Because I'm bought into NAZ Elite, bought into what Ben's doing, and I've just been doing that the last 7 years. And the people I feel like that have the most success on our team are the people that buy in from the beginning and realize it's going to take time, but once you get to the top, like you will stay at the top for a long time because you're doing the training and you're just 100% bought in. So that's something I think that probably has allowed me to stay at that level and realize I can't worry about what other people are doing. I need to worry about what I'm doing.
Awesome. We're going to come back to that. Here's one that's probably a quick one. It's interesting. I've never seen this question. I have the impression that most professional runners don't care much about sun damage. So what is your opinion on this and how have you coped with the elements during so many years of training? Very interesting question.
That is. It's probably just something maybe that doesn't get like tweeted or put on Instagram, but obviously many of us care. Like I put sunscreen on every single day. I have sunscreen for my face, more on my face, and then on my arms, my back. So we're putting on, the best way that we can probably try to prevent some sun damage. And then, yes, there's a period of the summer where we're not wearing shirts and we're wearing sports bras, but also seeing a dermatologist yearly and getting moles and different stuff like that checked out. I think it just maybe doesn't get talked about because it's not like a sexy topic like, hey, I went to the dermatologist today. But for those that are wondering, I take care of myself. I know a lot of my teammates. Kellen always has sunscreen in. She's giving it to people. So it's something we...
Tyler Day. Nobody
Day.
wears more sunscreen than
Exactly.
Tyler Day. I
Right?
promise you that.
Totally. And because some of us have different like skin pigmentation and how they...
Tyler doesn't have a choice.
Correct. Exactly.
Is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we do think about it, and especially with my family with the history of cancer, it's on my mind.
Well, that's good. I hope whoever wrote that question knows that they actually do care, and they do take care of themselves, and obviously so should everyone else. Okay, this is the last one, a little bit of a tough one here. Okay. You are renowned, I'm just reading it word for word, this is from Twitter, this is not my question. You are renowned as having a constant and vocal anti-doping stance, which is to be applauded. Do you think you and others within female distance running are possibly running the risk of being labeled as selective or biased in your outspokenness by remaining quiet in regards to Shelby Houlihan?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. I think the further I've gotten in my career and I'm in our testing pool and I have a pretty good grasp of clean sport and what it means. And in years past, when something would come out about a positive test from, let's say, other countries versus U.S., it was very easy to assume, oh, an athlete tests positive for something. I trust our system, definitely positive. And then you're kind of pissed that people stole prize money. But maybe I'm not consistently vocal because there have been athletes in the U.S., that tested positive that I raced against. And then I would be really upset about, but maybe didn't either tweet about. So I can see where that consistency doesn't look great. Regarding the Houlihan case, when it first came out, I honestly did not know what to think. I think what gets tough with athletes in the U.S., you have we're more close-knit, let's say, than some of the athletes like internationally. So we might have better ideas of like, oh, well, my friend is roommates with them. So you have an idea of like, well, she has to not be doing something like that's in the gray area or that would be not in the clean sport. But then the longer I started to look at her case and then I almost went back into my own bias, I came up with the conclusion, you actually have no idea who is clean, who is doing something. Your best friend in the running world who you don't live with could be doing something and you don't know. So it is really tough to be outspoken in a lot of ways. You want to trust the system. So when something comes out, it's really easy to say, yep, like they went through everything they needed to go through. If it came back positive, like I have to trust that. So with Shelby's, that's what I'm going off of, that her test came back positive for nandrolone, then that's something that she did. In the beginning part of it, when there was the kind of appeal for her to run the trials, I did tweet out, I do not think that she should be allowed to run the trials as like a special case or anything. So it does get really convoluted and it's hard to stay vocal. And I've definitely had to check myself over the last year and a half when I'm seeing cases come out of international athletes, of U.S. athletes, and figure out why would I believe a U.S. athlete versus international. So I really like that question because it does help me like check in with myself.
Yeah, we always appreciate being held accountable, and I think Steph did a great job answering that question. It's probably not fair of me to have her answer that and not give you a little something about what I think. And I would just say that if you really care and it's something you're passionate about, which it is for Steph, it is for me, you sort of have to hold back your opinions until you've read as much as you possibly can about a certain case, right? And so in this particular case, it's reading the report that just came out and forming your opinion based on that report. And that's certainly what I've done. And I'll just flat tell you that I read the report, and it certainly seems like she had nandrolone in her system. It certainly seems like it was ingested orally, and it certainly seems like it did not come from the burrito. Beyond that, I don't know. Beyond that, I don't know. And so I think that's all you can do is your homework and your due diligence and not jump to conclusions. And I think Steph was getting at that too, that perhaps that this is a good opportunity for all of us to say, wait a minute now, that's not fair of us to just make assumptions. We have to, and certainly share those assumptions publicly is a mistake, I think, until we've done our homework and that opinion is an educated one.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Yeah, and I think the conundrum that maybe U.S. athletes and myself get in is we're used to competing against the same amount of people. So when something like this happens, like, it throws you because you've believed that, like...
And you want to.
You do.
You want to believe it.
that
of
these
course.
times were possible, and you're like, yeah, I'm training that hard. That's possible. So then when this happens, you think, well, crap, is that possible? And so that's what gets really difficult, because we've trained alongside and raced alongside a lot of these U.S. athletes. So it makes it really difficult to just be like, well, great.
Well, you want to believe it, number one,
Yeah.
and then you don't want to fall into the hole or fall down the rabbit hole of constantly thinking everybody that beats you is dirty.
Correct.
Because that's, first of all, it's not healthy.
No,
it's also not true.
No, correct.
And it sucks.
Yeah.
It's not a fun feeling.
No.
And so you just wish you could wipe it all away and everybody
Right.
could be clean. But of course, it's not that way.
Right.
And so we have to be realistic. But I think something Steph said earlier is the bottom line, which is you have to worry about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The only clean sport you can really control is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All right, on we go. Rapid fire questions, and then we'll get to my one question. So here we go. Rapid fire. We'll answer these as quick as you can. Maybe you did your homework before. I don't know. This one actually is kind of tough.
Okay.
What result/race are you most proud of, and why?
Okay. The Olympic Trials Marathon in Atlanta in 2020. And I'm most proud because I got to the line healthy. It was the hardest training I ever did alongside Alfie and Kellen. And for the first time in my career, I legitimately believed I could make the Olympic team. And I didn't stop believing that until I crossed the finish line. And to like be 19 seconds off the team and like to see the team happening in front of me, like, was devastating. But then I walked away being like, well, that's as good as you were on the day. And so when you can have a day where you're like, I wouldn't have changed anything about how I raced, those people were just better than me, that sits like really well.
Yeah, I think we may even come back to that in this last one. Okay, what's your favorite workout?
Gosh, it sounds so mean. I don't really have a favorite workout.
That's good.
I mean...
That means you're not putting too much pressure on any one day.
Yeah, I don't mean to be mean, but like, obviously I like running, but no one like likes to be like, ooh, 15 times a mile today. They're all really hard. They all benefit you. They all have a purpose for wherever you're at in your training cycle. So
How about type of?
yes, a hybrid. Anything that has like a 3-mile tempo and then maybe like 800s and a 3-mile tempo.
That's what Matt and Nick did today.
I know, I kind of knew that. Or if you're running through a range of paces, like you're cutting down, because then I get to go through different gears and I almost find out more about myself as an athlete on days like that.
All right, what's your favorite picky bar?
Well, it used to be cinnamon rollin', but I think I had too many of those in the last year. I'm kind of burnt out. So I'm going to go with all-in almond right now.
Okay. You heard it here. Most overrated part of training?
Wow. Overrated part of training. Speed work and not understanding what true speed work is.
Got it.
Yep.
It's for another podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, Clifton's or Carbon X for a marathon?
For a marathon?
Yeah.
Oh, neither. Rocket X?
Well, I think they're asking
Like
what
Carbon?
would you... They're asking for your advice. They're trying to choose between these two.
Okay, I would say both of them will get you close to where you need to be. It's just a matter of if you've trained in either. Like, I wouldn't train in the Cliftons and then go run in the Carbon X or race. I would try to wear the shoe throughout your training cycle.
But you could train in the Cliftons every day. You could do some hard workouts in the Carbon X.
Correct, and then be ready to race
in the Carbon X.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
I think that would be. I was on a Zoom last night with the great Dave Zimmer of Fleet Feet Chicago and their training group. They're awesome people, and this question kind of came up, and I said, of course you should get the Carbon X.
Yeah.
There's no, like, why wouldn't you get...
Yeah, the best shoe out there.
Well, a shoe that is meant for race day. You know, there's no speed. Just because you're a 4-hour marathoner doesn't preclude you from being able to buy a shoe that's meant for race day. So wear the fastest shoe you can.
Yeah.
Okay, balancing being a mom and a pro runner. I don't know. I guess I don't know how to answer that quickly, but maybe you can give it a shot.
I'm like writing a post on this. Balance is a myth. There is no balance. I think you just the way I like to describe it is you show up as different versions of yourself each day. So like some days I'm a better professional runner and kind of a crappy mom, and some days I'm a better mom and like professional running is lower on the totem pole. So like after a 22-mile run, I was a pretty worthless mom for a few hours because I was really tired, and I was like, let's just play a game, and they want to play baseball. So I think like giving yourself a little grace and realizing you can't be all the things like every hour of the day, and kind of compartmentalizing like what version of you shows up each day.
Got it. Sports psychology, something for everyone or a tool for elite athletes?
Ooh, well, I'm a psychology major, so I'm partial to that. I just love psychology in general, whether it's sports psychology or not. I think everyone could use a little bit of that in your life. I don't know if that necessarily means talking to a therapist, but finding some outlet where you're like exploring the inner workings of your brain. So maybe that's journaling, maybe that's blogging, maybe that's just finding ways to like whatever's in your brain, get it out either on paper or talk to someone.
Love it.
Yeah.
How do you train your brain to go far? But that is an interesting question, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not only training your body to handle 26 miles if you're a marathoner, which I assume this question is referring to, but your mind has to stay very focused for a long period of time, 2, 3, 4 hours, depending on how long it takes you to run a marathon. So how do you train your brain to go that far?
I mean, I feel like if I could write that down or quantify it, you could put it in a box and sell it to people, but I don't know. It's almost like it's just like evolved over time, because obviously when I was 16, 3-mile cross-country races were really long, and I had to do that. And then when I was in college, 10K was the longest, I had to be engaged. So it almost feels like my brain was like naturally selected for it, and maybe this is why some people run and some people don't, because either your brain is looking for an outlet or is looking for a few hours to like process things. So my takeaway is don't think you have to like think about the race when you're in it. Like sometimes in a marathon, I'm not thinking what's going to happen the next mile. I might be thinking, oh, what gel did I put on my next bottle? Or I wonder where Riley and Hudson are going to be on the course. So I'm thinking like lots of different thoughts, and I don't worry that some of them could be like distracting. The distracting thoughts are negative. I feel bad. I don't know if I can keep doing this. So I would caution you to get those negative thoughts, like think about them and then move them out, but then just don't be afraid if you're kind of like free flowing throughout a race.
Got it.
Yeah.
What's the secret to running negative splits?
Optimistic reality, your favorite quote, meaning know what shape you're in and don't do the whole, well, I've been training at this marathon pace, and so I'm probably just going to go out like 10 to 20 seconds faster per mile and just see what happens. I mean, I don't want to be like mean, but like dreams do not come true that way. You have to be like super realistic of where you've been training at, what kind of shape you're in approximately, and plan your race accordingly. And so the reason you do negative splits is because you were running at an effort that was just below like the shape that were you in for a long time, and then you had a lot of energy reserve. Or negative splits happens when you weren't worried about the time and you were worried about just racing the people around you or in a pack. But you still have to have an idea of what shape you're in, and like don't go out over your head.
In other words, there is no secret. You have to practice it, and then you have to execute it.
That's right.
All right. Are there any plans for more YouTube series or another YouTube series featuring you and the daily routine of the life of a professional runner? You had a series like that a while back, and it was very popular, but I know it's a lot of time and effort. So any plans to do that again?
I just talked with Nick Hogger about this today, because he was like, yeah, I give a lot of people your YouTube videos, and I love doing it. And I had Steven Kirsch and Ryan Sterner from Rabbit Wolf film them. Sometimes I think I wasn't like cut out for the YouTube, meaning talking and doing video were like not my strong suit. So I've kind of lost a little bit of like what my mission would be for it. So I started out thinking I would have these talks by a desk and like answer your questions.
Like we're doing right now.
Correct. But I have you as like a co-partner, so it's easy. When it was me, I'd be like, what do you guys think? And obviously there's no one there.
Nobody there.
Right, exactly. So
you feed off others.
I do. I do better with an audience or if I was talking to someone. So I found myself like not delivering my best version. So I would like to put stuff together, but probably not anywhere in this next year, maybe 2022 and beyond.
And finally, in terms of the rapid fire questions, do you have a plan B when running a marathon, or do you just adjust on the fly if your goal time slips away?
I do not have a plan B.
That's right.
And exactly. Adjust on the fly means if you're not feeling good, just I guess my like career mantra is like get the most out of yourself on the day. And you don't know what that's going to be, but maybe it's like letting go of expectations if you thought you were going to feel a certain way, and also realize like feelings don't have to dictate outcomes. Meaning I run plenty of races where I felt like garbage, but I run really well because I know I'm fit. And when you know you have a background of like you did the training, but just you're not feeling on the day, you can still like squeak out a lot from yourself. So I've truthfully maybe 1 or 2 times, but rarely ever have a pity party for myself in a race if it's not going how I thought. I just say keep trying to like run the mile you're in, beat as many people as possible, like get the clock. I mean, yeah, just always like get every ounce of yourself that you can, and don't worry if it wasn't, the dream goal that you wanted, because you're probably going to get closer to that dream goal if you never give up on those bad days.
All right. Thank you for that, Steph. Thank you to your fans for all these wonderful questions. That made for a really cool first 45 minutes or so. And now these last 15 minutes or so, I wanted to talk about something I know that you and I have done a couple of times on runs of recent, which is basically this. So, those listening to this podcast probably know this, but you're someone who's worked very hard for a long time now, decade plus, on social media. You've been very authentic. You've been very calculated. You give fans an insight into everything you're doing, every aspect of your life. We've talked a lot about that today already, and you've created an enormous following doing that. I would love to hear your thoughts on what's been a very hot topic lately, which is the pressure, the stress, the anxiety that athletes, particularly in individual sports, I would say, are feeling as a result of what they see and hear on social media. You touched on this a little bit in the course of answering all these questions. It's been a hot topic. Naomi Osaka is talking about taking a break from tennis. We saw Sydney McLaughlin, after winning the trials and setting a world record, break down, crying because of what she was reading on social media. We're hearing about this. We saw Novak Djokovic crying in his towel when he was losing the match the other day at the U.S. Open, going for the Grand Slam. So we know there's a tremendous amount of stress. I think it's very fair to say more than ever. And I do think it's fair to say because of social media. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but I think that's a big driver of this extra stress, this extra anxiety. Though I also think there's an element of, hey, it was always there, but we didn't always see it. So a lot of things at play here, but let's just have a conversation about that topic.
Yeah.
You start.
Okay. So it's easy, like when you're naming those athletes, I'm like, yeah, really big time, really big time, really big time, really big time. So sometimes in those sports and at that level, it's understandable because you do have people like analyzing what they're doing, criticizing what they're doing. Then when I bring it back to like us, I'm like, no one actually, at a relative level, like no one's telling me how to train. No one's booing me after I'm getting 6th place at the Olympic trials. So the running world in a way is like a very positive, like, so to speak, community. And you're always going to have people that think, oh, because you're an athlete and you're paid to do that, either fans or people who come to pay to watch you get a say in how you're performing. I think that's almost like a natural, like, because being an athlete is an entertainment business, right? And so there's going to be more critics, like there is in any sort of like movie critics, all that kind of stuff. Where it gets muddied a little bit is because there's humans, as all these athletes are. And so there's lots of feelings. So it's hard to know if it's the external like pressure that is really coming and that people are seeing it on social media, or it's the athletes putting that unwanted pressure on themselves. And that's what I'm not sure about.
Well, I think athletes were always going to put pressure on
Right,
themselves. I think that's not new.
Of course.
My premise a second ago was that this is fairly new, this new pressure of social media, because, it's basically a decade old, give or take, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple things happening when we talk about anxiety related to social media. Yes, it is the fans and some comments, certainly, because I think it's very easy for the outside observer, even myself included, to say, well, you shouldn't care.
Right.
Well, what do you mean you shouldn't care? When somebody reads a nasty comment about themselves, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. But I also think, and you touched on it a second ago, I think there's that, you got to remember with social media that it's not just, hey, athletes have to post because they have to keep their fans engaged. I actually agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that when they post, then they scroll. So they're not just posting, they're not just sharing, they're not just interacting with their fan base. They're also looking at what so-and-so is doing, what so-and-so is doing, what so-and-so is doing. And it's, let's be honest, a skewed version of what so-and-so is doing.
Correct.
Because it's all positive.
Correct.
And it starts to mess with your mind, thinking that, man, these guys must be doing something that we're not doing. Oh, this person seems so happy. I don't feel like that.
Right.
And all of a sudden there's this snowball of anxiety because it seems like everybody else is hunky-dory.
Yeah.
They're not,
Yeah.
but it seems like they are. Am I on the right path there?
No, you are, but I also would say that's a choice, right?
It is, but the younger generation stuff,
Yeah.
this is all they know.
Yeah, for sure.
This is how they grew up. Like, it is a choice, but it almost feels like it's not for them.
Yeah.
Because they've grown up scrolling.
Yeah. But I guess, like, being a parent now and thinking, my kids are coming into that world. Like, we have conversations in our house about things like, tell us about things that happen at school. And they'll tell us, let's say a kid did something. And I'm like, does that seem cool to you or not? Yeah. And it's like, if a kid's being a bully, and they can be like, that's not cool. So for me, I guess it always is like, mental health. Can we start in the home? Like, are we doing a good job of like how we're portraying things to our children and telling them, hey, you're going to be on social media, you're going to see these things, but let's have a conversation about what's real and possibly what's not real. And it's easy to portray like my life is so awesome. Whereas I guess my whole like shtick for years has always been be really authentic. So then you have a choice of who you follow. That's what I always tell
Correct.
people. Is your feed making you feel better or worse? If it's making you feel worse, hey, click that unfollow or whoever is like bringing you down. Because those people, I think what's the worst, I know people who don't post, yet they talk about social media, so they're on all the
That's
time.
right.
That to me is like, it's like quit hating on people and start creating, like doing something for yourself, right?
Yes.
And doing more of like, what do I have going on? And I think that like, it's easy for people to criticize or to keep scrolling. But I love Brene Brown. She has that Man in the Arena, Teddy Roosevelt. And it's like, if you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked, I am not interested in your opinion. Yeah. And I think everyone could look at that and realize like, you don't have to be on it. But then if you're going to be on it, it's hard to say, well, that's making you feel worse. So you're saying, like, should we take away phones or should we take away these apps? No, I think it's more talking about, hey, follow the people that are making you feel positive or they're making you want to do things that...
But like we're saying, that's an interesting bit of introspection that has to go on.
Correct.
Because... It might be kind of a weird thing, but you might actually have to unfollow people that are really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
They're making you feel not cool.
Absolutely.
Because you're feeling bad about yourself because you're not them.
Correct.
And that's a hard thing to do, but you might have to do that.
You do.
Right?
No, absolutely.
Or you might have to say, hey, why don't I just not go on for a week?
Yep. And see how I feel.
Nobody's going to care.
No.
Even Steph.
Correct.
If you didn't go on for a week,
no.
God bless you, nobody's going to care.
Correct. And realizing that's important.
It's okay, right?
Exactly.
And how did you feel that week?
Yes.
Let's say you didn't go on Twitter, literally deleted the apps for a week. See how you feel.
Correct.
See what it forced you to do.
I know people that do that.
And I think it could be cool.
Yeah.
I think it could be cool.
I've done that before.
Yeah.
And here's how I know I like it. I miss it. Because I miss interaction.
Yeah.
So that's how I know I have a healthy sense because... my mission is like, if one person is reading something that I wrote and they're like, I feel good about myself, then my job is done.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I have 90,000 whatever followers.
Yeah.
If one person is like, yep, then I'm like, well, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, I did think about, you were talking about some of these people that I mentioned are at such a high level.
Yeah.
I actually thought to myself, if I was, and I hate to say this because I don't want to sound like a know-it-all, but I don't know how else to do it.
Yeah.
If I was in Naomi Osaka's camp, let's say, I would really say, you know what? This is so unnecessary for you.
Yeah.
Just hire somebody.
For sure.
Just hire somebody.
Correct.
And I don't mean to make it sound easy, because
No.
again, she grew up watching it, so it's, looking at it, it's part of her life.
Correct.
But I just wonder, I guess I'm speculating.
Definitely.
Could that be
Yes.
could that be an answer for the highest of high level
Simon
athletes?
Biles.
Simone Biles. Yeah,
Simone
I
Biles.
forgot to mention her,
Yeah.
and of course she's a major catalyst for this entire conversation, and
Correct.
rightly so.
Correct.
She's done an amazing job of sharing.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
Simone Biles is an amazing human being, an incredible human being, and it was so sad to find out that the stress and anxiety, really from the outside, caused her to have this experience that was less than fun at the very least,
for sure.
but certainly a lot less than she was capable of at the Olympics, because of that stress and anxiety. That sucks.
And then it's hard.
She's got to be away.
Well, then it's hard to know, was that all social for her? Because then you start to look at the sports that they're in, and and what's being developed there.
Sure.
And are people, like professional athletes, it's a great job that we do, but if it is ever like, I'm so stressed to even race, we're probably not doing it right. Something that we're doing in our path is not right.
That's right.
Right? Because it is a choice to be a professional athlete, and we're lucky that sponsors think we're worthy enough to pay us, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, here's an interesting one. So, and you and I have talked about this because I think it's very related. The other thing that I think happens, and why you see some of these, for lack of a better term, I don't want to say breakdown because there's a psychological definition there. I would say low moments that are
mental hole.
Yeah, just that are captured on film, if you will, at the biggest stages. Yeah. Simone Biles being an example, of course. Naomi Osaka being an example, of course. The thing that's interesting about those is I do feel like there's also this piece that we, as athletes, we think, I want to win the gold medal. I want to win the gold medal. I want to win a world marathon major. I want to make the Olympic team. I want to run under this time in the marathon. And I'm telling you, this relates to everybody. This is not just high level people. Correct. And you achieve that goal. Life doesn't change. No. And I think there's this thought that when I do this, everything will be different. It's like winning the lottery. Yeah. When I win the lottery, everything's going to be different. And it's not different. No. And in fact, sometimes people crash. Correct. And what are your thoughts on that? Am I onto something there?
Well, yeah. I mean, financially, that's the whole, like, money doesn't buy happiness, but it's true. And I can speak to this in a very real way. Like, I had the best news of my life in early May when we sold Picky Bars, and it was like, wow.
Best financial news.
Best financial news, correct. Yeah, and it was just like everything that, like, or even just self, like our sense of self, like what we worked at and all that stuff, like it paid off. And then literally 4 weeks later, my mom died. And I'm like, okay, I would give back the company selling if my mom didn't die, because it realized that meant nothing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, in a way, I think that, like, thinking something will change in your life is going back to that introspective. Like, you have to find out what is making you internally click.
Why are you doing this?
Exactly. Why are you doing this? And if it feels like I'm waiting for something to change or make me happier, you should probably do something else.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Those are hard questions to ask of yourself.
Yeah.
But I think they're very important. And I think as it relates to the age group athlete, it's what I've said so many times at so many different conferences and clinics and Zoom calls and whatnot. Don't set your time goal 12 weeks out, 16 weeks out, 2 years out. Yeah. Build the fitness, enjoy that process, and then set the goal the week of based on the fitness. Way more realistic way to do it. Yeah. Sets you up for success. Yeah. And is healthier mentally.
Yeah. And the two things, like, that the anxiety that sometimes people have on race day before, it's like, hey, remember, no one's making you do this. Like, you're choosing to do this, so that should be, like, the fun part. And then that the danger of attaching your self-worth to your time or your place. And that's something where that's why I think I've been able to do this. Like running, I say, is my life, and it's what I eat, sleep, and breathe. But it is not my life, and it is not what like defines me. And so it's the least interesting thing about me as a person. And I think that definitely is something that you have to cultivate over time. But if there's young kids listening to us and looking at professional athletes, like I want them to know that like, yeah, your time and your place is not who you are and makes you better than someone else. And so having that like humbleness and just real humility and realizing you don't have to be defined by those.
It comes back to the high school question, right? What would we tell those high school girls or high school boys? I don't know what the question, I don't know who the coach was or who they work with, but I think we would just tell them to enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Just enjoy it. That's the best part. So thank you, Steph. This was killer. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We will be back very soon with another Hoka NAZ Elite athlete. We will try to get to as many athletes as we can this fall. We've already had Alex Masai and Steph, and we're just going to go down the line and give you guys some cool conversations, we hope. Thanks, Steph.
All right. Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Midday Treat with NAZ Elite. I'm Addison Rosario, Coach Ben's daughter. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NAZ_elite. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter on NAZelite.com. And stay tuned for the next episode of the Midday Treat with NAZ Elite.